Hello, we're back. So, yep, the first time we worked on the suspension elements and just hung out. Now I'm going to start working on the turret, because I've gotten the tracks done by now, and they're looking alright. It was my first time with Lincoln Length, and they're tolerable. Some of the parts are a little rough, but now they're setting up, so I'm going to give the hull a break while I work on the turret. I'm planning on doing a bit of a Sherman style texturing on it, so some larger flat spots where somebody was in there with like an angle grinder or something like that, with little streaks around, little cuts around corners and stuff. Because I doubt these turrets were cast as well, and so I doubt they were very clean, just like a normal Sherman turret. And I may not be able to see your comments if you're leaving them because my iPad's being a little weird today. So we'll see how that goes. Now, this turret is slide molded, so we've got a lot of the detail already on here. As you can see, there's already kind of a casting mark, and also the front end was slide molded, so it's looking pretty nice. It looks like my iPad isn't updating. Can you guys hear me? Is everything working, or is my Wi-Fi suddenly dead? I may need just to... Yeah, I'm gonna have to restart my iPad, and then we should be able to get going here. Oh, okay. Sweet. Thanks, guys, for letting me know. I've got my iPhone recording it if you weren't here before. And then my iPad is for seeing comments because it's right in front of me. So if I don't get to your comment yet, I will get there in a second. I just checked my phone and saw you guys commented, so thank you for that. I'm going to start by gluing this together just so we get like a base. But a lot of this stuff is going to change in a second with what we're doing. And this side. There we go. All right, turn this back on. There we go. And we should be up and running with comments in a second. That's a little weird. My iPad reset. Or I just got the new iOS. I think it's more the iOS. Okay. There we go. Okay. Cool. Thank you, Samuel Fisher, Mick Keenan, and Ileana Gerst for letting me know. Okay, so this kit is for the British tank and the American tank here. So we're gonna have to make some adjustments. Some of it can stay, but there are 2 sink marks here and here that will have to be removed. So what I'm gonna do is actually go for super glue here. And you can always remove it, but if we leave a sink mark, we have to reapply. So I'm gonna go a little bit heavy and then hit it with some activator, because this is a challenge, so we're gonna have to do this quickly. Grab a paper towel. And I just want to clean off most of it so that when we're texturing, we don't lose any of that detail, or so it doesn't like peel off. And then I'm going to be obviously filming at the same time, so this is why I've got the backdrop set up. So we'll put this here. And lay it down on each corner. And there we go. It's all filled in. So you can see it's just the triangle now, or the rectangle with that triangular indent. So yeah, that's a really easy way to fill gaps. All right. All right. Okay, now the turret's ready to go. There's nothing else I really need to add to it before we start. So I think I'm gonna first do the seam line along the back here, because obviously there is a casting seam that would be along the back. Let me go grab a photo reference and I'll be right back. Okay, so it looks like that's more or less where the casting seam is going to be, is right along here. I think I'm going to go for stretched sprue this time because it's a little quicker and less messy than 2-part epoxy putty. Let me quickly get some pictures of an M22 to guide what we're doing. And we'll get going. Is that? Okay, yeah. Perfect, prime portal. Okay. Wi-Fi is being pretty screwy today, so if we have issues with it, we can stop. Let me see. Okay, so it appears that there's no super visible casting mark for this tank, or casting seam for this tank. Let me see if I can actually see one here, or if we are in the clear and we'll just sand it flat. Yeah, it doesn't look like there's a casting seam, but there is that characteristic like angular shavings off of it that are kind of reminiscent of a cast Sherman turret. So we'll definitely have to do some of that. And I'm sure you guys are just enthralled by watching me sand stuff for forever. So we'll get to the texturing part soon here. I just need to make sure that this is clean. Now it did kind of look like there was a slight casting like impression on the back of the turret here, but I can't be 100% sure. So I'm just gonna go with like a slight little thing, and then that'll be it. Okay. Now to pull out the camera again. Okay. So the first thing I want to do here is there's a pretty angular section here. I don't want that. I want it to be more rounded because right now it's pretty sharp. And obviously castings were super rough, so I don't have to have a perfect finish here. So I can just kind of get at it with the file. It won't matter too much. And then there is a slight seam line here. I'm gonna quickly just destroy with our X-Acto knife. Yeah, and on this this side as well. Now this is kind of hard because there are screw heads right there on the turret, and so gotta be careful not to hit them. I already kind of damaged one, so that's all right though. It's gone now. So let's start texturing it. And so there's a angle right there. Let's see. I'm just trying to plan out how I'm gonna do this. This side still needs to be cleaned up a little bit more. Let's start on the back side here, right under here, because this is where a lot of the work would have had to have been done. So it's probably a safe place to get started without worrying about any real damage to the model. So first, I'm just gonna make this a lot more angular, this like corner here. Yeah, that should do it. And so I'll do that for the next couple as well. Okay, now that's looking, yeah, a lot more angular. Probably even stand to take a bit more. Yeah, that's actually looking pretty cool. So we're gonna do this all the way around the back here, where it needs to be angled like that, or where there are chamfers. And the in-scale, like the real tank, did not have as extreme chamfers, but because we're working in such a small scale, we want to emphasize them so that they show up in the finished piece. And of course, if you missed the last stream where we worked on the suspension elements, you can go check that out. It's still up. Okay, so now that that's done, I think what I'm gonna do is cut some slate divots here. This is gonna be a guide for my file. Yeah. Just like this, more or less. And this will guide where my file is going to go and help that stay in one spot and kind of look realistic. Okay, so now taking this, put it in there, and just get at it. and then on the other side. And you guys can take a look really quickly. You can see kind of how we're getting in there with that. It seems extreme, and I'm honestly kind of scared. But I think once we texture it, it's gonna look pretty nice. So to continue on, just doing the same thing on the other side. And I thought I would need the file, like the grooves I cut more, but the file seems to kind of carve its own grooves, and it tends to look pretty okay. So yeah, that's looking pretty sweet. We do need to make sure that they're kind of consistent and stay with it for the whole chamfer here, or radius, I guess, because it's chamfered already. So yeah, I'm gonna keep adding these for a second, and then we can continue on. And so what I've noticed is that in these corners, like here and here, sometimes it'll be either like a flat spot or there'll be like a little hole poked in it. And so I want to add a little bit of a texture with like holes in it. Obviously just like tiny air bubbles, right? So we don't want anything huge, just like little dots around the turret to add these, like, I don't know, imperfections in the casting, I guess. And I know I'm already gonna retexture the front as well, so I'm not gonna deal with that. But I want to add these subtle little casting marks here, just to kind of, you know, add some interest. And I believe that the what is it? Words fail me. The transmission case, so the front plate also was either cast or rolled in that way, and so it might have similar imperfections in it. We'll see how far I take that. But for this back part, I really want to emphasize the cast look. So I'm definitely gonna go for it. And then I'm gonna flatten out the corners here. A little bit to add that kind of nasty look. Okay. Okay. Cool. That's looking actually pretty cool. So let's move on to the front section. And the front section doesn't have the same like cuts in the back of it. And just so you guys know, I'm referencing a lot of what Night Shift did for his Easy 8. Obviously I'm not directly copying him because it's a different turret, so that would be silly to copy exactly what he's doing, but I'm taking inspiration from his work, like I'm sure many of you modelers have, because he just does incredible stuff. So there are these chamfers on the front as well, and we'll be taking those off too. So just gonna get in there and kind of grind them up, I guess. And I'm gonna accentuate these and add other imperfections on top of them for these like rounded cast sections, because like rounded things in World War II that were cast weren't actually that well rounded. They had these weird flat spots all over the place, and places where, you know, there were issues with the casting process that left, you know, that you had to grind out by yourself, and so they weren't perfectly finished. Even in American tanks, which people always think it's the Russian tanks, right? But no, American tanks had the same issues with their casting process. So yeah, that's kind of my logic for what I'm doing here, is don't make a perfect radius really anywhere. Always make sure there's like multiple facets to it. And fingers crossed this will look pretty cool when it's done. I'm even going to add some flat spots in like the middle of the turret sections, just to add that faceted feel to the whole thing. I'm sure I'm making people angry with this, so I'm sorry, but I don't know. I find this is kind of fun to figure out how things should look. Okay. All right, I'm gonna hit this with a 1000 grit sponge, and we'll see how it looks. Where's my little sponge? Where I put it? There it is. Okay, I think I'm actually going to go a little bit more with it now that we've looked at it. So let's do that. Let's move this out of the way. So I've got a good angle on it, and just kind of get in there and cause some mayhem. Okay. Now we're getting somewhere. And this is the exact same thing I was doing before, just a little more extreme. So, yeah. We're getting there slowly but surely. This is my first time doing a heavy texture on a turret. So it might not be perfect, but I think it'll look pretty cool once we're finished off here. All right. I think we're almost there. I'm gonna add more random flat sides to this large chamfer here. That basically makes it the entire turret. Just because I feel like, yeah, there's definitely flat spots there. And that should look pretty cool. I don't want to lose any of it in the like self-leveling primer or anything like that, so I gotta make sure it's pretty pronounced. Okay. Okay. Let's hit this with some Tamiya Extra Thin next. This will basically just help like start the texturing process. And this makes a very light texture, but it also helps like clean out the holes that we drilled, stuff like that. I'm going to switch over to this guy. Except I don't want to use my, let's use a older crappy brush. Okay. There we go. So Mr. Cement S and boom. Stippling. And it's already showing up this texture. And you can be pretty heavy-handed with it, obviously, because this is a cast turret. So the texture's already going to be super heavy. But Bronco didn't add any texture when they made this kit, so it's up to us to rectify that on our own. All right. So now you can see that there's definitely a texture developing there, more or less. It's really glossy, so it's probably hard to see, but it's definitely showing up. I can also kind of see that I did make a couple mistakes. So, like right here, it looks like I put my finger in it, which, I mean, I didn't, but it just, something with either the texturing or maybe the file that showed up weird there. And back to stippling. Obviously, we're not going to get any texture over the super glue, but that's fine. Some of the melted plastic actually seems to be like getting stippled onto the super glued area right here, and actually making a nice texture. All right, camera's back in, and we'll film this part. So surprisingly enough, there's this black residue that is being deposited on the surface of the model, and I think, because this brush is clean, I think it's actually the black super glue I've been using. Gotta plug in the camera. But yeah, I think it's the black super glue I'm using because nothing else is really... there's no other contaminants. So it might be reacting a little bit, or it's just not fully like 100% cured, and so it's a bit more susceptible to reacting to cement. And obviously, gotta texture the top of the turret as well. course, this is a bit more, you gotta be more careful with it because otherwise you'll damage details that you don't want to be textured in the first place. I'm actually gonna I'm gonna test the difference between the Mr. Cement S and the Tamiya Extra Thin on this specific piece here to see if we're getting any better texture from one or the other. It seems that the Tamiya stuff reacts a bit faster and gives me a bit more of a bold texture, which I like for this model because that's what we're going for with the casting here, is a really rough look. So I try to stick with this, see how it turns out. Okay, yeah, the Tamiya Extra Thin is a lot more effective at getting me the right texture here. So that's pretty sweet. And yeah, it does appear that it definitely did react. The super glue did react with the modeling cement, but it doesn't seem like it affected it in a negative way for the most part. All right. I think that's good for just that part of it. Now we're going to switch over to modeling putty to get that final look that we want. And obviously it's thinned with modeling cement, so it's gonna have the same effect. It's just going to basically be more texture on top because it's a bit thicker. So that'll be the main benefit here, is that we'll get a bit more out of it. All right. And I mean, I'm sure everybody here has seen The putty stippling method before, where you just thin it down with some cement and then apply it. So I'm not going to like describe it too much. If you want to see a description of it, the video for this tank should be coming out within like the month. So by November, 1 month from now, it should be coming out. At the latest, obviously. And as you probably predicted, a lot of the like holes and champ facets that we put into this aren't really going to show up too much. It's going to be much more of a hint of them, even though we did quite a serious amount on the original turret. There's so many other things to look at that they're going to kind of fade into the background. They'll still be there, but they won't show up as much, which might be a good thing in some cases, just so that it's not that's not what the model's about, right? So we want to make sure that we don't like drown out other things. And the pinholes, I'm probably gonna, for the little sink marks and stuff, I'm probably going to put a wash into them. I'm not sure. A lot of them are being obliterated by the armor texture I'm putting on, which isn't ideal, but it keeps it subtle enough that the one or two that will show through are going to look pretty cool and unique. So I'm going to just keep going with it, and then we'll sand it down in a little bit with my 1000 grit sponge again. And I think a lot of the details will come back once once I sand this down a little bit, because I think a lot of the pinholes are just being covered over by a thin layer of putty, and there's still an air gap underneath, so we should be able to get those back pretty easily. And I'll be upfront with you guys, I don't have a ton of great reference material for this. I mean, it wasn't a very, highly used tank. It was used like once or twice by a couple airborne divisions. And so the information on it isn't great. But I think going off of casting for American tanks at that time, that we can definitely get a good looking, like convincing looking texture out of this. Just gotta make sure that it like lines up with what a Sherman would have looked like after being processed at a casting factory. And some of the roughness on chamfers and stuff like that is just showing up as an uneven chamfer, which I think is pretty cool in and of itself. But I mean, obviously, modeling and weathering especially is a very subjective topic, and it depends on who you ask on how far you want to take any of it. For me personally, I love making a tank pop with my build. So less weathering and stuff like that. Like I still do a bunch of that, you guys know that, but more build focused and getting that to look pretty neat. All right, and we're gonna go over it one more time with another thick-ish layer, just to really get a decent amount of texture in there. And as our putty cement mixture begins to dry, it gets a lot thicker on the brush, and so you can achieve a lot heavier texture as you build layers up at a more exponential rate. Okay, I think that is textured. This brush is obviously now shot, but that's done. Now we'll give it a quick polish and finish assembling the turret. And in general, you can pretty much polish immediately. I can see some merit in waiting, but there's like, it dries really quickly and really resiliently, and so you shouldn't need to worry too much about like waiting for it to fully cure, because it's sandable almost instantaneously. You know, looking at it now, I don't think that the like roughening the casting quite worked to the degree I wanted it to. Let me see. I'm just like trying to watch this carefully here. So for these cut marks along the turret face, I'm gonna reopen them a little bit, just to really emphasize the cuts, more or less. Just flatten it out a little bit more. Yeah. Just like that. And then hitting it with the sander again, just to pull off any unwanted fuzz. Now, I think I'm gonna basically reopen some of this and like add a couple more facets to it, just to really emphasize the rough casting texture, because that's, I said it wasn't like 100% the main reason I'm doing this build, but it is one of them, and I find it really cool when it really pops. So this is a personal choice. You guys can do whatever you want with yours, if you ever plan on making a locust or a Sherman for that matter, because it's basically the same technique. So yeah, hopefully I haven't horrified you or turned you off the channel too much by my texturing here. I don't know, I think it'll look pretty cool. And the texturing is almost done, so we'll probably shut down the stream in a little while. But obviously the obligatory, if you haven't subscribed yet, please do, because I mean, you'll be able to see the full build video on this, and I've got a bunch of other videos on there already, and the list is growing. So yeah, I'd appreciate if you subscribed and or liked this live stream, because that'll help it get out there and more people will see it. Okay. I think we're almost ready here to give it the final little bit of a okay, that looks nice. think we're basically there. I'm gonna emphasize the flats on the corners once more. Just really make sure that that effect isn't lost in the retexture. I didn't realize how much you'd lose just by putting a simple bit of putty over it, but I did lose quite a bit, so that was a bit of a surprise. I'm going to use Tamiya extra thin this time because I think it'll dry a little slower and I can get it a little thinner, so yeah. And I'm gonna make it a lot thinner so that we like don't lose as much texture this time. All right. All right. Make sure this is nice and thin. And we're stippling. All right, that looks a lot better. So let's do a final polish on it, and I think we'll call it a day there. And I might have another live stream later, just to work on painting or weathering or something like that. Maybe I'll do some chipping on live stream. Or let's do mud effects, okay? I'll see you guys back here for mud effects on, I guess, Sunday morning. Or early Sunday morning. I don't think anybody's going to be up at the time I need to be up, so maybe not. We'll see. If no one hits the live stream after a little while, I'll just turn it off Sunday morning. So yeah, it's always fun to have something to listen to on when you're at the bench. Thanks for coming, Samuel. Do you guys want to see more of this, actually? Like, before you go, would you want to see more of this, or is this kind of boring for you? Do you prefer just videos or hanging out? I want to get your guys' opinions, since you guys basically fuel this channel. So, it doesn't actually, like, from what I've seen, there aren't any casting seams for this turret, which is really weird, but they didn't really show up in the photo references I had. So actually, no, I'm not, which is a little weird. They must have been machined away since they're literally just not there. So yeah, good question. I'd love to, but not this time. I'm gonna replace these screw heads. They're all damaged. All right. I'll see you guys later. Thanks for stopping by.